Story 1. My name is Christophe. I'm an 18-year-old guy living in Gatineau, Canada. For those who don't know the area, Gatineau is a pretty calm city right next to Ottawa, about 15 minutes from downtown Ottawa, but on the Quebec side. I grew up speaking French, so apologies if my English isn't perfect. This happened about 2 months ago, and I still think about it almost every night. I had spent the evening at my girlfriend's place. She lives about 25 minutes away from me by car. I left around 1:30 a.m. on a weekday, so the roads were completely empty. No traffic, no people, just silence. I was about 10 minutes from home, driving down Rue Saint-Louis, a wide road with 2 lanes on each side running along a river. It's poorly lit. At night, your headlights are basically the only thing letting you see what's ahead. I turned at an intersection where there's a convenience store and a McDonald's, then drove another 100 meters. That's when I saw something in the road. At first, it was just a shape, a silhouette moving erratically in my headlights. Then I realized it was running, zigzagging, right in the middle of the street. My first thought was that it had to be someone drunk or high. No sane person runs like that at night in an empty road. But as I got closer, the silhouette sharpened into a young woman, early to mid-20s maybe. She was waving her arms wildly like she was trying to flag someone down, like she was begging. And instantly, my brain went somewhere dark. I thought about all those horror stories, the ones where someone pretends to need help, where stopping your car is the mistake you never come back from. So I decided not to stop. As I passed her, it only took a fraction of a second. I saw her face. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't acting. She looked terrified. I drove another second, maybe 2. Then I did something that still makes my stomach twist. I slammed the brakes, made a U-turn, and went back. I stopped about 7 meters away and slowly cracked my window open. I didn't even get the chance to speak. She turned around and ran straight at my car. I panicked and rolled my window back up instantly. She grabbed the rear passenger door handle behind me and tried to open it, again and again and again. The doors were locked. Through the glass, I could hear her screaming, "Call the police! Call the police!" My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. While it was ringing, I lowered my window just a few centimeters and said, Okay, calm down. I'm calling the police. You're safe." Something about that made her stop. She wasn't aggressive anymore. She wasn't erratic, just completely broken. She didn't look intoxicated at all, just pure panic. She told me she was going to walk back toward the convenience store and McDonald's I had just passed, about 100 meters away. She started walking. I followed her in my car, barely moving, maybe 2 kilometers per hour, still on the phone with the dispatcher. I explained everything. A young woman, running in the middle of the road, screaming for someone to call the police, clearly distressed, but not drunk or high. By the time I finished giving our location, we reached the convenience store. Both the store and McDonald's were closed. There was no one else around, just her and me, under harsh gas station lights. She leaned against the wall, crying, and for the first time I could really see her. That's when I noticed her hands. They were completely covered in blood, not smeared, not splattered, soaked. I've never seen that much blood in my life. Her clothes were stained too. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. I asked her quietly, "Ma'am, are you injured?" She shook her head. "No." I swallowed and asked, "Is that your blood?" She looked at her hands. Then she said, "No." My mind went blank. If it wasn't her blood, then whose was it? Before I could ask anything else, there was a long silence, maybe 10 seconds. Then she broke. She started crying harder than before and said in a voice I'll never forget, "I'm so ashamed of what I did. They will never forgive me." Before I could even process what that meant, a police car pulled up fast. 2 officers got out. One of them took my name and phone number and told me I could leave immediately.
The other officer went straight to the woman. I didn't argue. I drove away. That was the last time I saw her. It's been 2 months. No call from the police, no follow-up, no news article, no missing persons, no crime reported anywhere. Nothing. My friends and I have tried to make sense of it. We've come up with theories, some of them very dark, like, for example, an infanticide. But every explanation falls apart somewhere. If the blood wasn't hers, that explains part of it. Her words explain another part. But why was she running in the road? Why didn't she call the police herself? Why was she alone? Why has there been zero trace of whatever happened? Sometimes I wonder if I helped a victim. Other times, I wonder if I unknowingly stopped someone who had just done something unforgivable. And sometimes, I wonder if the scariest part is that I'll never know which one it was.
I've gone back and forth for years about sharing this. I'm keeping everything anonymous and vague because I don't want this tied back to me or my family. I've only ever talked about this with close relatives. This happened when I was very young, but old enough to remember it clearly. My family is Christian and believes in God, and while I didn't understand much at the time, now that I'm older, I view this as something spiritual and demonic. At the time, we lived in a house where the living room and kitchen were one open space. We had an old family desktop computer set up in the living room near the TV. One night, while both of my parents were home and my siblings and I were all in the same area, my oldest sister was on the computer watching one of those pop-up scare videos that were popular back then. She called me over to watch it. I got startled, laughed it off, and went back to playing. She then called another one of my sisters over without warning her. I wasn't watching them directly, but suddenly I heard my sister scream at the top of her lungs. When I turned around, she was visibly shaking. My mom immediately ran to her and grabbed her. My dad started yelling, asking what she had been shown. Everything escalated quickly. My sister was shaking uncontrollably and then suddenly went limp. Her arms dropped to her sides. I remember my mom looking terrified in a way I had never seen before. My mom called our pastor late at night and said we needed to go see him immediately. While my dad got the car ready, my mom sent me into a bedroom with my sister. I sat next to her on the bed and held her hand, trying to comfort her the only way I knew how. I remember quietly telling her, "It's okay. Everything's going to be okay." What still haunts me is how cold she felt. Not just cold hands, but cold in a way that didn't feel alive. Years later, after attending funerals, I realized it felt exactly like touching someone who had passed away. While I was holding her hand, she suddenly turned her head very fast and looked directly at me. Her eyes were completely black. I remember feeling an overwhelming sense that whatever I was looking at was not my sister, yet somehow still was. Now that I'm older, I believe she was possessed in that moment. We drove to the church and went inside. A teenager tried to help and gently touched my sister's hands, but the moment she looked at him, he backed away and went to get the pastor. We were brought into the main area of the church. My parents told me everything was fine, but I knew it wasn't. I sat behind my dad while the pastor and others prayed over my sister. They were rebuking whatever was inside her in the name of God. When my sister began screaming, it didn't sound like her voice at all. It was deep, distorted, and unrecognizable. She kept screaming, "It hurts, it hurts." Later, she told me she wasn't in pain. Whatever was inside her was the one screaming. At some point, my dad picked me up and tried to block my view, telling me not to look. I looked anyway. I saw my sister twitching, crawling, and moving in ways that didn't look human or normal. I remember hugging my dad tightly, frozen with fear. After that night, no one talked about it again. Years later, when I was older, I finally asked my sister what had happened. She told me that when she watched the video, she felt something jump into her body. Everything went black, and she felt like she was watching herself from outside her body. She said she could see both herself and whatever was inside her.
She also told me that when she turned her head and looked at me that night, she was scared whatever had possessed her was going to go after me next. When the prayers ended, she said she suddenly felt like she was back in her body, exhausted, terrified, and afraid it would happen again. To this day, she barely talks about it and only says it was the worst experience of her life. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I just know what I saw, what I felt, and how clearly this memory has stayed with me. As a Christian, I believe this was something spiritual and demonic, and it's something I've never been able to forget or fully explain.
Story 3. To start this off, I used to work at this summer camp. I was about to be a sophomore in high school at the time and getting training to be a camp counselor. Of course, the girls had to stay in the haunted cabin, and you had to say goodnight to the little girl spirit that lived there. So, being the teenager who was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that shit, I did not say goodnight to her. So everyone, including myself, was asleep. Then I woke up to a noise. Let me out, please. I shot up out of bed, grabbed my flashlight, and tried to find out who was trying to mess with me. I looked up at the girl who was sleeping above me, dead asleep. I did one final look, deciding it was my imagination. Wrong. Please, I want to leave. I was honestly so freaked out that I zipped myself inside my sleeping bag and tried to sleep. The next morning, I told my supervisor about what happened. She asked me if I said goodnight to the little girl, and I said no. She gave me a look and said, just tell her goodnight and she will leave you alone. A few nights later, the other girls in my cabin and I were all getting ready for bed. Half of us went to bed, and the other half, including myself, stayed up to talk. But side note, the girls who went to bed did not tell the little girl goodnight. All the girls who were awake saw a straight-up orb flying around the room. We all, of course, screamed and ran to our supervisor's cabin to tell them what happened. They told us that our lovely male supervisor had visited the cabin today, which pretty much pissed her off because the little girl hates men. We all go to bed, and in the morning I go to talk to my male supervisor. For privacy's sake, I'll call him Tommy. We all go to bed, and in the morning I go to talk to my male supervisor. For privacy's sake, I'll call him Tommy. I low-key told Tommy, like, what the hell, bro, you were making my girl mad. He apologized, but then he asked if I wanted to hear his curse. For the sake of everyone who lives in these woods or works there, I am not going to repeat the curse. Sorry, not sorry. Now, this is the story of how I started believing in ghosts and later figured out I was a medium. The most I can tell you is that this thing haunts you, but only when you are alone. Tommy and some of the boys he was watching over were telling me about how this thing would stalk them. On more than one occasion, when Tommy or one of the boys would go to the bathroom, there would be footprints outside. Like not just footprints, and not like someone was standing waiting in line. It was like someone was pacing, almost like an animal waiting for its prey to come out. One of my friends was even scratched on the back of his neck when walking to his cabin alone. Okay, so y'all have waited long enough. Here is my story. So all the counselors were told to attend the church for a counselor-only mass. My friends all wanted to go get things from the cabin, and being a dumbass, I was like, I'm just going to go wait by the church by myself and wait for everyone. So I take the path to the church from the dining hall. I'm in the middle of this outdoor space between the path and the church. So the layout of this place is that the church is behind me. There are some trees in front of the path, but you can normally see people walking down it. And to my right is a bridge where my friends would have to cross to reach me. The path in front of me is the same path someone would have to take to get to the church from the dining hall. So I'm facing towards the path, the church to my back, and then I saw someone coming down the path. I yell, "Hey, I'm over here," thinking it was another counselor. The figure stopped dead in its tracks. I thought that was weird. Maybe they're confused about where my voice came from. So I yelled again, "Why would you do this? Why? Like, hello, every horror movie ever. Hey, I'm over here." Bad mistake. This thing's head turns towards me in an instant. All I could see was a black shadow figure with bright red eyes looking right at me. Right when it looked like it was about to move towards me, I heard my friends yelling at me from the bridge. I look over at them, then straight away look back at this thing, and it was gone. Now, I'm not sure if this was my awakening, but ever since working at this camp, I have been able to sense, see, hear, feel, etc. spirits. I will say I have always been able to see things, but I didn't believe in ghosts, so when I saw them as a kid, I thought they were imaginary friends. This was just the experience that made me start to think this stuff might be real. But shout out to Magdalene, the little ghost girl in my basement from the 1800s. Anyways, I am living my beautiful medium life and only let light in. Keep that other dark stuff out. But stay spocky, y'all.